Good evening and welcome to the fifth episode of the Word Gets Around Business Chat Show. Apologies for the delay in the start here. They say every day is a school day, GCSE results day today, and we've had some technical issues. So we've been working out between us how to get this thing live, but we're here now. So those watching live, thank you for joining us. Hope you're well. This is live, interactive. So if you've got any questions you'd like to ask tonight, please pop them in the comments section and I will read them out to our guests later on. So without further ado, we'll crack on with the show. I'll introduce my first guest. Really excited to welcome back Kate O'Sullivan, Managing Director and owner of Adpr. Wonderful company locally. Really look at elements of communication, marketing and media. Kate is responsible for the development of Adpr, the growth of the team and strategies for her clients. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Kate is on the line and we can crack on with the show. Kate, are you there?
I am here, yes.
Excellent.
Yay!
Good to see you again. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good to see you and thank you for having me on the show and hi everybody. I'm very pleased to be here, not at all stressed after our technical difficulties. December.
I think we caught up a couple of months ago, Kate, online during the Meet the Business series, which I ran, which was great fun. Really enjoyed those and find out more about Adpr. But for those people that don't know, if you'd like to tell us a little bit more about the business and kind of what you've been doing in the last 6 or 7 months, I guess, during all this year.
Yeah, sure. Gosh, what a year it's been for everybody. So for those who don't know, Adpr is a communications agency. We are based in between Taunton and Yeovil. We've been running actually for nearly 30 years. For me, I've worked at the company for 15 years. I worked my way up right from the very bottom to the very top, and actually purchased the company 2.5 years ago. So the past 2.5 years for me have been a bit of a whirlwind, to say the least. And what we've really been focusing on is making sure that the business is really fit for the future. So what we do is, there's a team of 10 of us, and we work with a really wide range of clients, from big global businesses right down to startups and everything in between, in a variety of different sectors as well. And ultimately, it's all about communications and making sure that we are working with businesses very closely in terms of their communication strategy, which is all about really saying the right thing to the right people at the right time to help grow and expand businesses.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I guess for lots of those businesses that started up, end of last year, early part of this year, before everything went on, it's a bit of a baptism of fire in terms of communication and marketing. And part of what we'd like to talk about, I guess, go into a little bit more about today is communications. And obviously, all these messages we've had from large-scale companies down to the smaller owner-managed businesses, in terms of them looking at their communications and adapting how they do that. How have you found that during this time?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge for everybody. And I think this came so quickly. Every single business had to change and adapt in some way. I think I was lucky in that we're quite a small team, so moving remotely was quite easy. We already have a bit of a digital footprint as well, so we were very quickly able to adapt and really take advantage of our social media channels as a means to let people know what we were doing. But it has been really difficult for businesses, and I think we are lucky because communications is what we do. So for us that was relatively easy. For a lot of other businesses, particularly for business owners, in a crisis, you suddenly find that you're wearing multiple hats, and you're having to manage your staff, your customers, your product delivery. There's so many things to consider, and actually your communication sometimes falls right down your list of priorities, and that can be really difficult and actually can be quite damaging to a business if you neglect your communication.
Yeah, and I guess with say different businesses, the people that I've spoke to during lockdown and how each business and just business sectors adapted throughout, work in a similar field to you in terms of marketing, and that was the first sort of thing is to pull the drawbridge up and I guess for a lot of people, to digest what the heck was going on, and how do we talk to our customers and inform them what's going on when we don't know ourselves at the moment, that uncertainty. And then it gave people, I guess, an opportunity to have a step back from their own business, which is a bit difficult, isn't it? Normally, when you so in your business and not able to look back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I include myself in that. We've all had to take a step back and look at our businesses, which is great, actually. And I think most of us have realised that we need to make changes to our business. And I think long term, that can only be a good thing. But obviously, as you say, a lot of people sort of closed down completely and stopped communicating, which is understandable, but people probably shouldn't be doing. And I think one of the things, talking about what communication has taught us through this crisis is that actually communication is absolutely critical to business success. There's no two ways about it. And I think often when people think about communication, they just think, oh, it's what we're saying on Facebook, or it's media coverage, or it's this fluffy thing to add on to the side. But actually, it's so much more than that. Communications is involved in everything we do, and it impacts everything we do, from what we say to our body language to what we write to video content. Everything that we are saying and doing comes down to communication, and that there's nothing fluffy about that. And I like to think of it really as the glue that holds all of the different elements of your business together. And I think one of the key things that's come out of this crisis, actually, for a lot of people, is they suddenly realise that there's this huge emphasis on communicating internally, and people are starting to understand what that's all about. You're suddenly having to manage a remote team, and communication is absolutely vital to that. But people obviously don't always associate that with PR.
Yeah. And you touched on something then, and say if you've got your team working remotely, and it is much easier to have an office that you can talk, across the room and have a meeting face to face. But we've had to get used to working differently in terms of communicating, which I guess will change ongoing from now on for businesses. But I've been fascinated by all the approach from some of the companies. In fact, I saved a folder on my email of some of the big businesses. So Tesco, for example, and all the supermarkets, how they've all managed the situation from that level in terms of having a very wide demographic of customers. And I guess empathy's been a very key sort of, an area that's needed to come through in messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Tesco. I mean, they did it brilliantly. I think they were one of the first supermarkets. I think they may even have been the first, actually, to put a TV ad out there outlining what they were going to be doing to make the supermarkets safe. The CEO was making sure that he was messaging, sending a weekly email out to customers, informing them of any changes. And empathy is so key. It's always been key in communication, but I think sometimes it really gets missed when you bring communication into business. And I think COVID has taught us all, actually, that empathy is really important. And some of the relationships that have come out of this crisis are so valuable. And I think those connections have been made. When we're in crisis, people really look to find connections, and that comes about through communication. And I think we've removed a lot of the barriers that were there before. We're all sitting here in each other's homes pretty much day in, day out. And I think having empathy and being able to understand each other on a human level is so important. And I think actually moving forwards in business, it's going to become more and more relevant. And personally, that's something I feel really, really passionately about, because we are human at the end of the day, and we're all ultimately striving towards the same thing, our own goals. But we're all here and we're all contributing to the economy. So I think the more that we can collaborate and work together and empathise with each other, the stronger we're going to be moving forwards.
Yeah, I think talking about then so I was thinking then about the empathy. It's often Christmas, isn't it? Is the key time when the messaging kind of peaks in terms of the feel good factor, giving back, etc. And this year has really shown powering communities, and actually social media is gets bad press, but in terms of some of the Facebook groups and communities that have been like unable to meet up physically, have almost, the communication in terms of messaging has been sort of lifted through sort of social media groups and things, I think I've found.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've joined lots of different groups. You know, one in particular, actually, you know, Becky from Move, wellbeing groups that runs one. I've been part of that, and that has been so good because we haven't been sitting there talking about work the whole time. We've been talking much more about what we're thinking, how we're feeling, some of the challenges we're facing, and I think people need more of that because actually, we've been in a bit of a crisis, haven't we, with mental health and all of those issues. And I think a lot of that is because we're all having to put this front on in our businesses all the time. We're all having to pretend that we're okay, and we're all getting busier and busier. We almost wear busyness, you know, as a badge of honour. And this has just forced everybody to step back and think a little bit more about the things that really matter. And actually, the things that really matter aren't always the things we thought mattered prior to this. I think it has focused much more down to that human level and community spirit, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and so how much of that? Obviously, we hope a lot of those things we've learnt will carry forward. And how do you see general communications for businesses changing as a result of this? And
I think there's a huge opportunity there for businesses now. I think there's probably a greater understanding out there about the importance of communication and how fundamental it is to their business. I think communication is going to change. I think it's going to continue moving on to digital platforms. I think there'll be more collaboration happening. That will be through things like Zoom, networking. I think internal communications is going to be increasingly important.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, you know, so many people aren't going to go back to the office, and we're going to have to learn how to communicate better with our teams and get those messages out. And I also think as well, you know, there's a very crowded marketplace out there on social media at the moment. Every brand is trying to get messages out there, and the brands that are really successful are the ones who are going to do it with empathy, and the ones who really understand the audience that they're speaking to. So we know that people buy from brands that they relate to and brands that they like. So I think those personal values are going to become increasingly important for businesses as we move forwards.
Yeah, I think yes, it's interesting. You say when people, the way that we work has changed, and people working from home, and say the internal communications and how, which we're going to speak a little bit. I'll speak a little bit more about with Rob in terms of motivation and I guess from your point of view is that communications that people are, the ideas flow as well as they did in it together, and you know how things move forward with clients, for instance, if we're not meeting up so much. I mean, it's a great if we can have that flexibility now to work from home or work from the office. I know I've been back and forward between stopping my two daughters killing each other to rush into the office, you know, to get some work done. But it's nice to have that option to do that. And I think, you know, a lot of businesses have seen that opportunity. I thought in terms of with that, with sort of physical sort of spaces and people meeting up in terms of communication. There's obviously talk at the moment about in Taunton about the digital innovation centre, which was great news. I just wondered what your thoughts were in terms of that for businesses in Somerset.
Yeah, you've brilliant timing, because I was going to ask if I could do a bit of a shameless plug at some point. The innovation centre that's planned for Taunton. I mean, wow, what perfect timing for something like this to come to Taunton. I think one of the things I love about Taunton is that the community, the business community, is so supportive. There are so many interesting businesses in the local area, and everybody is really driven, really ambitious, and really willing to help others. But a lot of the time we don't know these companies exist, and it's the likes of Digital Taunton and things like what we're doing this evening that brings those groups together. So I think if there is a central point where everybody can go and meet and do it in their own terms, in their own time, whilst they're kind of getting that work balance a lot better in their lives. I think it's going to be a really powerful thing. And my plug is that what we really need to make it happen for Taunton is for people to fill in the form for their expressions of interest, which they can do by going to the Digital Taunton Facebook page. So that's really good. Yeah, and I just think that the world really is crying out for more space like that, where people can be themselves, they can collaborate, meet like-minded people. What's not to love about that?
No, same as you. Really excited for Taunton. I think it's a great time for things to be happening, and things we've learned from this year, the ability to. But we're going to need that co-working space to meet up, share ideas, but have that flexibility to work. Where it's lovely where we live, and it's kind of moved things on a lot more. People, I guess, embracing technology for all the exciting things that technology has brought, with technical issues now and again, but getting over those. But hopefully, it will push the need for better broadband, say, for communication in terms of people wanting to use a lot more technology like this with clients or customers. But it opens it up more to, if you've got clients all over the world, to getting used to using this.
Yeah, definitely. And, we have clients all over the country, all over the world. And I've been asked so many times, why Somerset? Why are you based in Somerset? And you sort of think Somerset is this amazing place, and it's often neglected from a business point of view. People don't really take it seriously or think of it as a credible place to do business. And I think things like having a digital innovation centre will really help to put it on the map. I'm going to get one more shameless plug in as well for the Somerset Catalyst programme, because again, that is something that's offering free support, and communications comes into that as well for the businesses at the moment who are looking for that extra bit of help. It's a free programme that's on offer, and again, people can take advantage of that. So I guess my point is, there's so much stuff happening out there. And what communication does is bring it all together and make people aware of it. For example, with the Digital Innovation Centre, the local newspaper had put out a small news item about it. Lots of people probably will have seen it, but actually what created the buzz and what's generated those expressions of interest was the webinar that was held and the publicity around that. And that's the communications part of it, really coming into its own. And that's exactly how it works. And it's powerful when it does.
Yeah, and what's been great about that as well as being the community, which you mentioned is really good in Somerset, but meeting the people behind the businesses, because it's great. You have like all the people you connect with online, but when you meet up with them, it takes it so much further. And like what's great at the moment is being part of that kind of movement with what Digital Taunton are doing, other people, other collaboratives. You mentioned the Somerset Catalyst program. That's great. And there's loads of opportunities at the moment to get free support that's funded for businesses. I was looking at one today that I think it's next week, and there's still places available on how to use Zoom and maximize online webinars, all that kind of stuff. And we've all kind of been pushed to like try new things. This kit's all kind of new for me. And what's been great is being people embracing this technology and using it to their advantage, which is it's great to see. So.
Yeah, it really is. And actually going back to what you were saying about, face-to-face meetings, and we have obviously lost an element of that at the moment, and I'm sure it will come back. But actually, I feel like I've seen my clients more than before, because before I would have shied away from doing a Zoom call. This whole being on video thing was not okay with me. I would much rather have picked up the phone and spoken to people. And we've all kind of got over that now. So actually, I've had more face-to-face contact with my clients than I would have normally. So in a way, yes, we do need to get back to meeting face-to-face again. Of course we do. We're humans and we need that human contact, but I think the technology that we are now embracing is so relevant, so essential, and is actually going to help our businesses in multiple ways, and do more good than harm.
Excellent. I've got a couple of comments, Kate. Very quickly. I've got a nice comment here from Shane. Kate and her team have been absolutely pivotal in what we've been doing at Digital Taunton and the Innovation. So a nice little thank you from Shane there. And
Totally.
Claire's just asked a quick question. Claire Rickson, what's the free program? So just to mention again the Somerset Catalyst details for that.
Yeah, so Somerset Catalyst is a free programme. It's being run by South Somerset District Council. It's very brand new, and basically what it is going to do is select a group of entrepreneurs, but also small businesses, people who are looking for support. So it might be that you've just set up a business, or it might be that you're running a business, but you could really do with additional support. And what Somerset Catalyst is doing is bringing together a team of people, a team of mentors. So you'll be put through a 6-month program where you'll be given workshops, a peer support group, and access one-to-one mentors as well. I'm actually going to be one of those mentors, so I'll hopefully be able to add a little bit of help from a marketing and PR point of view. You can apply. You've got to apply before the end of August, but it's really easy to do. And there's a website which is somersetcatalyst.co.uk. So it's a really simple process, and then they'll be going through and selecting people from there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kate. We're going to hand over to introduce Rob now. So I'll pop you back in the green room, and then we'll get you back at the end. Okay. Thanks, Kate. Thank you. So that's Kate O'Sullivan there from ADPR. If you've got any questions for Kate, please feel free to drop them into the comments section, and we'll bring you and Kate back later on to ask your questions. So now I'm delighted to welcome my second guest, Rob Perks. Rob's an entrepreneur and business strategist, and he's the chief executive of Inspire. So I chatted to Rob for the first time during lockdown as part of the Meet the Business video series, which kind of documented what businesses have been going through throughout this year. So I'm delighted to welcome Rob back. He helps support ambitious businesses, business leaders who fill the gaps between, bringing the resources and what businesses need to reach their goals to move forward. So hopefully Rob is still there. He is. Hello, Rob.
Paul, yes.
How are you doing?
Are we there? We're live. Yes. All right. Thank you. Yes.
It's good to get over the technical issues. I say it's every day is a school day, as I mentioned at the start.
I just had a particular day of that today.
Oh, have you?
Everything I've tried to do is had connection issues. So that's one downside with doing everything by tech. But there we are.
But we're here. We're here now. Thank you for your time tonight to come back. For those that are joining us tonight, watching live or watching the recording, if you'd just like to tell us a little bit more about Inspire and what the kind of work you do.
Okay, so I think as we can see from the conversation we've had so far, there is an awful lot of help out there for businesses. We're seeing that ramped up very significantly at the moment, with central government putting funding out to support business. Clearly, the government is pretty concerned about the state of the economy and recovering from COVID. And so there's a lot of funding coming out to support small businesses. But if you're the small business owner, then how do you actually access all of this stuff, and how do you find out about it, and how do you make sure you haven't missed opportunities for grant funding, whatever it is? So one of the key roles that Inspire performs is, for all of our clients, is making sure that they're connected up to all those resources. So Somerset Catalyst will be one, but there's a whole pile of other things that are out there to help businesses with different aspects of their business. And our job is to know about them all, and then to connect people into the relevant stuff. So I know from running my own small business that when you're really busy running your business, trying to find out how to access all this support, making sure you haven't missed stuff, is really difficult. So that's one of the main functions we perform. So we're really there to help a business to map out where it is today, where it would like to be in maybe a couple or 3 years' time, and then working out how to get there, what the roadmap looks like to get there, and where the gaps or holes in the road are, and what they therefore need filling, and the relevant expertise bringing in. If that's funded help, then that's brilliant, and you can take advantage of it. But it might be that it's commercial help, but it's getting straight away to the right help rather than trial and error and making mistakes along the way and taking a while to get the help you really need. So our job's connecting you straight up to the right help at the right time.
Excellent. That's very, very well summed up. And I wish I'd had been able to speak to you when I started my business nearly 10 years ago, because there wasn't much around at the time. It's good to see things out there now, and businesses such as yourselves that help people put them in touch with the right skills available. So we talked a little bit before when we on the chat when we first spoke at the Meet the Business channel, and I've just obviously caught up with Kate then in terms of this year is a very unusual year, but I'm sure you like ourselves when we were chatting about in terms of our behaviours and opportunities and adapting this year. I was interested to talk to you about sort of how things have been behavioural wise, sort of short term for people, and how do you see that changing after we kind of go back to the kind of new normal, as it's been called?
Yeah, we're going through a really interesting evolution this year, aren't we? So I think, back in March, everybody suddenly went into lockdown. Everyone's working from home. I mean, not literally everybody. Some people couldn't, but an awful lot of people were. And we suddenly found our offices that we used to use for half an hour in the evening to do a few emails suddenly weren't really suitable to sit there all day. Our backgrounds for our video calls were pretty unsuitable sometimes, with washing hanging in the background or the cat running backwards and forwards and all that kind of stuff. So just trying to adapt to that has been an issue. But I think perhaps one of the things that's really evolving is the fact that I think early signs were people adapted quite well to working from home, and in many, many cases were quite a lot more productive because they didn't have all the distractions of other people around the office. But we're now starting to find, for some people, the loneliness aspect of working from home and not having colleagues around is a real issue for some. And it's okay for a couple of months, you sort of head down and get on with it. How long is that sustainable for is a big question. So I think Kate might have referred to it a little bit. I think this idea of some sort of hybrid model evolving where we spend maybe some of our week with colleagues and some of our week at home working. Therefore, the offices don't need to be as large or certainly as crowded. But there's a real need emerging, I think, for social interaction beyond video call. My team are all saying to me, if they're doing these all day long, by the time it gets to 5 o'clock, they're going cross-eyed and got a headache. So they're great, but they do have limitations. And I think if you're the sort of people that are in meetings a lot and you have a lot of these every day, it can all get a bit too much. And especially when you're at home and you're trying desperately to work and there's kids banging on the door or something else, wife banging on the door, whatever it happens to be. I think people are just starting to struggle with that. So I think we're seeing some mental health issues start to emerge now.
Yeah, some really good points to say, because first of all, it was a good substitute, wasn't it? And if it'd been 10 years ago when this had happened and we didn't have this technology to be able to do this, it would have been so hard to keep our businesses going, keep in contact with our customers. But I completely agree. After a while, there's that need as social beings, isn't there, to actually get outside, meet people, have those micro moments, isn't there? Those micro moments in the office sometimes are the ones that make that rapport with people, isn't it? And it's interesting you say now it's kind of coming out the other side, and the long term, as you mentioned, the mental health issues of that, the need to connect with people, isn't it, in the real world and not just online.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, one of the businesses I heard the other day has actually set up something internally called the boardroom, the BORED room. And they keep a video running in the background all the time that staff can lop into. So the idea of this is when we're in an office environment, we'll swivel our chair around sometimes and ask somebody a question or make a comment, whatever. So the idea is that you can do that in this particular channel that will be kept open. So you'll be able to log in and out of that. If you've got another meeting, obviously you're not going to be in that. Yeah. But if you're just at home working, you can be logged into that, and then people can actually have off-the-cuff conversations without having to actually book a meeting, if you like. Because I think that's the thing that's missing. We're all booking meetings internally with colleagues saying, right, we need to have a chat about a particular issue, let's book a meeting. But we don't do the one-off questions, because that feels like I wouldn't hop on a video call just to ask one question. So that bit has disappeared from our communication, I think, a lot. That sort of, what do you think about this, or how would you tackle this particular question, that kind of thing. what we're finding is we save those up, and then we have a call at the end of the day, and somebody has a list of things they want to ask. So all of that, I think, is issues. And I think, if a vaccine comes along or appropriate treatments or both, we will go back to something halfway house. I think there's great efficiencies. We've certainly saved a huge amount of time not running around in cars to meetings that were probably unnecessary, as Kate was saying. And so I don't think we want to totally go back to where we were, but I think there will be a bit more of human interaction than we've probably been used to the last 2 or 3 months, I think.
Yeah, there's some really good points there. I guess because when you said about the back-to-back meetings, when you book those meetings, like you said, they've all got a particular purpose and an outcome that comes from it. Well, exactly as you said then, though. But chatting about the football or what you watched last night, about in terms of teams gelling and people having common interests, or just talking about something that, I guess, in terms of mental health, it can be just somebody who's got something nearby that just talks to them in a particular way that lifts their spirits, that unless you check in with people online, it's difficult to do that, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it can be positive, but it can also be negative. The blurring now between home and work. So, if you have had a bit of a argy-bargy with someone in the house, it's quite nice sometimes at 8 o'clock to be able to shut the door and go off to work and forget about it. By the time you get home in the evening, you have all forgotten about it and it's fine. Whereas when you're all in the same environment, you can't get away from things in quite the same way. So I think, that's a real issue. And yeah, so some people are just happier on their own and they manage much better on their own than others. Some people are more social beings and just like to be with people rather than, with four walls. So I think we have got to find our way out of that particular situation, really, to get a blend that means we can be productive and efficient, not crammed into office space in quite the same way that we were, but we still have human interaction.
Yeah, so it's having that option, isn't it? Really, I mean, personally, when I launched my business, I lived in a nice big house with some friends, and I was pretty much on my own all day in the house, bar their 4 cats that used to follow me everywhere. So, and I can get quite a lot done when I'm on my own, but there is that. Like I said, there's only so long you can sustain that till you need to. I've been working at home a lot, juggling the kids and trying to keep them off their phones and wanting to go outside to get some fresh air, and they're happy to stay in. And you go, only the other day I said to them, let's just get out for the village and go and do something. Because there's that need to have that break the cycle and to have those connections with people. And I know a lot of people that, having run the networking group that I run, there's a lot of people that are really eager to, as we all are, to meet up and just chat stuff that's just that's just stuff that happens that we don't really know is happening, and that kind of rapport that's built over time and these relationships. So I wanted to talk a little bit more to you now about, in terms of motivating teams and maybe those people that are returning from furlough, that kind of how that's changed, because normally we only usually have a break for, a couple of weeks in the summer, 2 weeks for Christmas and the odd day here and there. And then suddenly we've got these people that, how's that going to be for them to get back into the workplace? I wondered what your thoughts were on that.
I think this is really huge, actually. I mean, I think the first one actually is, it's all very well people that know each other well going off and working at home, and they've got the relationship already to pick up the phone to people, etc. But how do you bring somebody fresh into the business, into a culture and an environment when there is no physical space? So, somebody comes for an interview, it's probably done on video call from their home. And then you say, yeah, you'd be great. Thank you very much. You're starting next Tuesday. And you're still at home. And, you haven't got what that company is really about, apart from what you've read. So I think that's an issue. And I think motivation levels, I've noticed, is a real problem. I think if someone gets a bit down about something, or they have a bad day, they've got nobody to talk to about that, nobody to sound off to about it, nobody to help bring them back up and say, actually, I've had a great experience and let's share that, and so on. So I think you can go into it with a downward spiral and get demotivated, and you think, oh, I'm going to take a break and go in the garden for half an hour and have a coffee, and then you think, do I want to go back to work? No, I think I'll stay in the coffee and have another coffee. Stay in the garden and have another coffee. So I think that's not a kind of critical thing, but I think it's a real thing that we have to grapple with if we're going to maintain well-motivated, enthusiastic teams. That individuals will have problems and difficulties, and we don't pick them up in the way that we would have done when we saw them in the office, and we'd say, you look a bit down today, what's wrong, that kind of thing. Not always so obvious on a video call. So I think that's maintaining motivated teams. We've got to find other ways to do it, and I think therefore there is a need still to mix in some physical interaction with some distant remote typing, and also knowing your people really well, and those that can stay motivated, pretty self-motivated people that can just look after themselves largely, and others that need more strokes and more kind of encouragement and that kind of thing. And we've just got to understand our people really well to know what they need. It's the same in any environment, but I think it's doubly hard now because you just can't. When I first managed a team, I had a team of about 4 people in a big office environment, but we all sat round 4 desks together.
Yeah.
So you could really see them and talk to them all day long, and not being able to do that, it is quite a lot more difficult.
No, some really good points there. And I was just thinking back to something I watched today on LinkedIn. Simon Sinek was talking about, as I was with Kate, about empathy in terms of motivation, and there was an example he gave of saying to somebody, your sales figures are down for this quarter, this isn't good enough, blah 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 blah. But actually asking people, these are down, but what's going on? Is there something we can do to help you? And I guess it's opening up those lines of communication in terms of people feeling open to talking about things, because we're all human. And it's absolutely fundamental that the people to any business are the most important asset, aren't they, really?
Yeah. I go back in my own career, so 20 years, and I was managing a team of 400 or 500 people spread across the whole country. We we used to meet with them at least once a week. That I think was absolutely essential to really get a grip on what you're just talking about, to be able to have the conversation. How's the family? How's the dog? How's this? How's that? And understand what's going on for them. And because it impacts on work life, there's no question about it. So being able to do that, I think, is vital. And I think at the moment we need to make more use of outside spaces, because we can do that at the moment. Yeah. We can still meet. We're starting to do that, certainly internally, and we're starting to do it a little bit externally now. So where people might not be comfortable coming and meeting in a small office, actually to meet outside a cafe or something like that, and have a physical meeting is starting to be possible. And especially when we get a decent day like today compared to yesterday when it was tipping it down all day. So we're starting to have outside meetings with clients and with staff. So I think we've got to move on. We can't forever stay locked in our houses. It's just not really possible to continue that way, but still being sensible and still maintaining the social distancing and sort of having empathy with different people's comfort levels. Some people are more comfortable with that than others, so not sort of forcing people unless it's absolutely vital to do that.
No, I really like that, and I've been thinking about the networking group that I've run for years in terms of when nothing sort of happened in terms of online events since February, and how that comes back and how I need to change it, evolve it, and I've been thinking a lot about it in terms of there's that need to want to do something and connect people up. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about people that obviously come October, when a lot of the furlough money is going to go. There's obviously going to be a lot of people that are unemployed. There's going to be a lot of people that already I've known a few people that have sadly lost their jobs, but they've gone on to start their business. A couple of guys I know, graphic designers, they've got together now and they've formed a business. I wondered about opportunities in terms of how people can reimagine themselves in light of changes that have happened, what your thoughts were in terms of how it's going to change in terms of business, because we've already got the backbone of this economy is the kind of self-employed and the smaller businesses, and there's those people that have seen those opportunities to start now if they haven't before. And I just sort of thought what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, so I think it's the case right the way through, actually, whether you're starting a business. I mean, in some cases, somebody might have been running a business 20 years, but it feels like a startup again because they've got to reimagine it. They've got to change it quite radically, perhaps in some cases. So one of the things that the Heart of the Southwest Local Enterprise Partnership are funding is for us to do 2-day reimagining workshops with people that want to do that. So, maybe they've just started, or maybe they've got to reimagine what they've been doing because life's changed. They can get 2 days of support in a workshop environment with a few other businesses and sort of using those as sounding boards as well. But the idea is to come away at the end of that 2 days with a plan to take things forward. So it's hard, and I think it's just as hard if you've been running a business for 20 years and everything's been ticking along. You've made the odd change here and the odd change there, but broadly speaking, you just kept the thing going, and all of a sudden half your business is gone and you've got to completely change the way you do things. That's actually quite a different skill from what you had before of running the business that was up and running already, perhaps took it over from your dad or something. So yeah. I think we need to support all types of business owners in doing that, because it's quite a hard job, whether you're starting or whether you're not. So for people to be aware, there is 2 days of funded help to do that exercise.
Excellent. Well, we can share the details for that. And it's interesting you said about people that need to reimagine their businesses, because I've worked with quite a few businesses in terms of as a designer, as a consultant, that maybe want to rebrand. And it's, again, looking at what's the need for the rebrand, and reviewing how their businesses have changed and the stakeholders involved. And it's a fascinating subject. And some people just go, oh, we just want a new look, well, but what's the impact of that? What's the brand equity you've got and the history of the company? But you said something there is a lot of people have always done it the same way, and then something like this happens and you have to adapt, you have to change. And that's great that there's workshops like that, because it's tough to take that step back, isn't it? And see the opportunities, because sometimes you can be a bit blinkered with what's going on.
Yeah.
So that sounds really good.
Yeah, no, it is a big one. I'm straying into Kate's territory now, but I mean, I think changing your brand and that kind of thing is something not to be undertaken lightly. It needs an awful lot of thought, depending. I mean, if you've got a brand that nobody really knows, then it doesn't matter too much. But if you've got a brand that's known, changing that is quite a big, high risk thing to do. It might be the right thing to do, but it needs careful thought. And plug for Kate and her team. You need to go and talk to somebody about that to get some professional advice ready before you go ahead and do that. Because I always say to people, the easiest way to think about brand is when people say your company's name, what image does that conjure up in their mind? So what do you think your customers, or anybody else for that matter, think when you say ABC Limited? What does that mean to people? And they will have a little thumbnail sketch, a picture, or they maybe could write half a dozen phrases of what that means to them. And that's what your brand really is. And if you suddenly start doing something different, you have got to think carefully about that, because we've seen lots of companies go to the wall because they've tried to change. Woolworths is always the one that sticks in my mind, because I'm old enough to remember when everything was sixpence. And, you go into Woolworths and if somebody said Woolworths, everything's cheap and cheerful, it'll probably break after a week, but it only costs sixpence, so it doesn't matter. That was the image that you had. And then they tried to change that, and they never made it really, and eventually went under, I think, because they lost that thing. We're cheap and cheerful, that's what we are. And others came and stole their clothes. So changing your brand is something that you really need to think through carefully.
No, that's great. I could talk about that for hours. In fact,
yeah.
I love. I actually worked at Woolworths, was my first job, and I loved it.
Right.
And I was gutted when it went. And absolutely, I think like Wilkinson's, or now Wilko, I think pretty much their main thing was to be the new Woolworths, which they've done very successfully. And in terms of, again, sort of going towards sort of Kate's sort of thing, in terms of who we are and what do we stand for, that did get lost. And I think a lot of businesses on the high street started to broaden their offer. I remember when WH Smith started selling alcohol and cigarettes. You're a stationers. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's because it's really tough out there. But looking back at the people in the business and having the right people that are on board with the right message and are motivated in terms of what we've talked about. And it'd be interesting that some of the companies I was trying to sort out a holiday over lockdown. And of course, all the staff are working remotely and trying to keep motivated, but they're working for big companies and they usually work in a busy office, which is going to change. There's going to be more of those people going to be working from home. It's interesting to know that it is really keeping those people motivated, but also that they're in line with the vision and the brand values of the business, and that's consistent. That's hard to do, isn't it, when you've got people all working from home? So
hugely difficult, and I think we haven't yet. None of us have really got our heads around exactly how you do that. How you get that same. It can be done. But it needs a lot of work and it needs a different way of thinking from what people have been used to. So there's a lot more to come on that thing. But people need to pay attention to it and think, how am I going to create a sense of oneness, a sense that we're all in it together, heading for a particular goal, and we're all supporting each other along the way to get there. Getting that feeling amongst people when they're all remote and working from home is not easy.
No, that's where great leadership comes in as well, as in terms of how you do that outside of the normal office environment. And it's going to be interesting to see that evolve, and from here on and next year, and how things move on from here. So great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Love chatting about some of those points there, Rob. Let's bring Kate back in and see what she thinks on that, if she's still there. Hopefully, there she is. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kate, we were crossing into your sort of communication area, and I just wonder what your thoughts were on that, really.
Yeah, no, well done, Rob. Good job. Yes, the branding and the strategy and all of those things, I think they do all work really well together. It's all part of the business strategy, isn't it? And identifying the brand, it all needs to be backed up by that strategy as well. So the two things work really well together. And Rob, actually, he said he's coming into my territory, but him and his team have been advising me and Adpr around our own brand over the past 12 months or so, because we all need someone with a fresh pair of eyes to come in and look at our brands, to help us navigate the way through.
Yeah. That's what I found during this process is myself working in marketing and branding it's been that chance to take a step back and that helicopter view and things, and a lot of the people that I work with, a lot of them are startups, and sometimes it's not knowing. I guess the classic example is a lot of people obviously start with a logo, and they want a logo to communicate what they do, but they've not thought about the brand values, their customer audience, how they reach them, and I guess the communication, the kind of tone of voice, and all those things. I guess we all work in those spheres and come in touch with those businesses that are on that journey, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I quite often say to people when I meet with them, and they say they're talking about their purpose and their values and their messaging, and all of those things need to be really carefully crafted. But people really overthink it as well. They feel that they've got this really compelling purpose that's going to change the world. And you don't. It just has to be very real to you. And that's all you really need to know. And that's when you bring in the professionals, or you spend some time with your team working out messaging around it and making sure that it's going to say the right things and communicate the right things. But the essence of it all should be there already, because that's what's going to make your brand really authentic. And actually, that's what's going to attract people to you, because customers are very, very savvy these days. And anyone can say that they're the best and they're the biggest and get the best customer service. But that falls apart very quickly if that isn't real. People can see straight through it, and then they will never come back to you, and they will never give you a second chance because you're not seen as being real. So, a very fine balance. My advice to people is always be true. You know who you are, you know what you stand for. You think about all of the other stuff and wrap it around it really nicely. Communication should only ever really be amplifying and maximizing what you've already got. Not thinking of doing things just for the sake of it.
No, it's a really good point. And I guess as well as that is it evolves over time. My business turns 10 years next year, and I look back on, I didn't have a plan at all to start with, and really struggled with, as a new business, what we were about. But essentially, yeah, you said it was about me and what I think. And if you're a small business, then people get to know you, and the world's much more transparent, which more than ever in terms of people. They said those touch points. People can do their homework on you, and it's just there's opportunities there for people to really have a good platform on getting their business out there.
Yeah.
I wondered if you had a question for each other.
I do. I've got a question for you.
Be kind, Kate.
I will be kind, I promise. Well, you obviously speak to loads of different business owners with different shapes and sizes of businesses. And one of the things I love about what Inspire does is it comes in and they challenge you in a really nice way. They challenge you to look at your business. And Rob, I was wondering, what do you think is the biggest barrier that business owners tend to put in front of themselves that limit their businesses from growing?
Good question.
It is a good question. And I think probably what I would say to that, my first thought around that is the barrier is the level of their experience to date and their competence to date. So they can be reluctant to move into new areas where they don't have competence or they don't have experience, and where they need to therefore bring in the relevant help or experience to help them get there. So we often find companies get stuck at a certain stage of growth, so they could grow quite fast, maybe for several years, and then the business owner finds that actually they've got no experience of taking it to the next level. They've never done that before, so they just stop. Whereas with a bit of help along the way, they could actually break through that barrier and move to a greater stage of growth. So imagining themselves being twice the size that they are and thinking, how would I actually achieve that, rather than I don't know how to do that, so I won't. I think that's probably the single biggest thing, because if a business has got the right product or service, there's really no reason why it can't carry on growing. It's just the lack of expertise or the lack of the right people in the business. And I think a lot of businesses start as family businesses and employing family members. And there comes a point in the company's growth where perhaps those family members are no longer the best people to be in all those jobs, but actually being willing to tackle that and for those people to move on in some way so that other people can come in that can take the company to the next level. So I think it's being willing to tackle those challenges is the single biggest thing that stops people moving forward, I think.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. And did you have a question for Kate at all?
Yeah. So what do you think, Kate, in terms of this issue really about brands really, and what do you think are going to be the winning brands? What makes a winning brand, do you think, in this new post-COVID kind of environment compared to what might have been there perhaps before?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to what we've been saying about the brands that are going to move forwards with genuine purpose, genuine passion, they've got to be prepared to adapt and change. You know, I think that's going to be critical to brands moving forward. And it's that authenticity and empathy and being able to understand very quickly what their customers want and be able to provide that service or product for them, and to do it in a really good way. And also, I think brands are going to have to be a lot more responsible when it comes to environmental awareness and ethically sourced products. I think those are the brands that are going to stand out. And I also think there's a huge opportunity for small businesses as well. I think they make up so much of the economy, and I think people's awareness is shifting now. People are wanting to support local brands and smaller brands. There's a real heart and soul to them, and I think if those brands get their communication strategy right, it will also really help them to attract new customers.
Well done for bringing it round to that. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because 1.7 trillion pounds is the turnover of the combined small business world in the UK. 1.7 trillion. So it is a huge amount of the UK's GDP that's generated by small businesses. So, you know, it is a critical sector to be working in, an exciting sector to be working in because of that.
Yeah, and we can change and adapt really easily, can't we? You know, SMEs, it's much easier to make changes, you know, than big corporate companies. I think we've got this wonderful freedom as well, being an SME.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. And so that's quite nice to say, be able to just change and move things and collaborate. I think collaboration will be key, particularly in smaller communities. I know, as you mentioned, Kate, there's a great community in Somerset and Taunton and different places, and it's great that there's those workshops and help available. And I guess one of the key things is, as you said, Rob, is people not stopping at their limitations and just saying, does anybody know this? And you see these things on social media. People go, oh, does anybody know how to do X, Y, Z? And as human beings, we have a need to want to help each other, which has been shown this year in terms of people helping out, you know, in their communities. But there's so many resources out there. And as I speak to lots of the graduates from colleges, you know, and you know, you can learn the programs inside out, step by step on YouTube. You know, somebody will know the answer to something, and I think that's is the need to be curious and fascinated, and push yourself to want to understand how things work. And it's great that both of you have joined me today from similar sort of roles that cross over in terms of people being motivated and the communications and businesses that need to have some kind of strategy to move forward. So it's been really good. So I sort of sum up, we're coming up to the hour. So thank you both of you so much for joining me tonight. Really enjoyed it. If you've got anything any links you'd like to send me, please do, and I can pop them below the video so people can join that. So thank you very much. I'm going to finish up in a second, but thank you so much for joining me this evening. Thank you very much. All right, I'll catch up with you soon. There we go. So thank you very much to Kate O'Sullivan from Adpr and Rob Perks from Inspire. Both wonderful people that are out there to help businesses to grow and move their businesses forward. So please check both of them out. If you've got any questions that you weren't able to ask tonight, please comment below and let me know. I can pass that on to them. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to get involved in a future Meet the Business chat show, please get in touch. Any thoughts or ideas are much appreciated. Got a few people lined up for some talks in the next few months. So look out for those. And if we can help anyway, then please let us know. Look after yourselves and speak to you all soon. Bye-bye now.